There's a really good comment somebody left under one of my videos referring to one of Adyashanti's teachings. If you don't know who Adyashanti is, well, almost everyone watching this probably does, but if you don't, check him out. He's amazing. He's got some really good books and audio books. My favorite is called Emptiness Dancing, and there's a book he has called End of Your World. A lot of people love that. Also, his audio book called Resurrecting Jesus is really awesome. So anyway, those are some resources if you haven't checked them out from Adyashanti. But the question or comment says, Angelo, Adyashanti says when people have the first awakening, it's an up and out movement. They become spacious. Is that the case for everyone? And does it last, or is it only in the moment of awakening? Thanks. Okay, so generally speaking, when someone says this other teacher said this, and what do you think of it? I usually kind of just defer to that teacher and say, all of us say things in a certain context in the moment to a certain person, and where they are may affect how we speak, how we refer to things, and so forth. Although, so I can't speak exactly what Adyashanti means at any given moment or any other teacher. Although he does use this terminology frequently, and I really like it and I agree with it. He's often said there's an up and out movement in awakening or realization, and there's a down and in movement. And then sometimes he refers to redemptive love and so forth. And I think that's a very good way to look at the whole process in a mature, fully integrated way, not leaving anything out. Specific to this question, this person does ask, though, this spaciousness, is that the case for everyone? I find that everyone has some kind of shift initially. It can look very different. It can sometimes even be overlooked, and then in retrospect, they realize it happened. It can be very dramatic, and it can be very subtle, but there are things about it that are always common. There are things about that first shift that are kind of the defining characteristics. I'm not going to go into that here. If you are interested, if you're starting out on this stuff, check out my 3 playlists. The first one's called Introductory Series, which is a really fun one. I answer a lot of questions that people ask that are rather basic, or kind of questions you might ask when you're just getting started in all this. The second playlist is Basics of Awakening, which is really setting the stage. And then the third playlist is Awakening Approaches. So those are the ones I usually recommend if you want to have that first shift, you're oriented toward it, you feel it coming, something like that, but you're not really sure how to go about that. But these kinds of questions get answered there. First and foremost, everyone's experience is different. So when I see a question like this that says, is it always like this or this? What I sense is the questioner is trying to prepare themselves in a way. Yeah. Or at least the mind is trying to prepare itself. And I want to caution anyone who asks questions like this or thinks about questions like this, that no matter what answer I give you, it's not really going to, it's not going to give you the awakening. It's not going to even it might give you the sense of awakening, but it's not going to give you the pathway for sure. Because the pathway to awakening is not a path externally. It's not a path of someone else's path. It's not a path of maps or descriptions or anything. It's actually a path inward, right? So I want to always caution people that, if you say, is it always like this? Is it sometimes like this? What percentage of people wake up this way and that way and all that? I can talk about that stuff and I, have some sense of it, but because I've encountered many people going through this, but I also know it's not really going to help you to have a concrete idea, to try to narrow your idea into a concrete idea of what awakening should look like, could look like, will look like. You're best off actually to ask yourself, why do I want to know that? What do you hope to get out of me saying it's always this way or not this way, and so forth. And that's helpful because you might see, I'm actually holding on. That desire to know how it's going to go is me holding on, right? I'm trying to hold on to another concept. And what if I just say, I want to take those concepts away because they're just not your concepts. They're not even my concepts. If I say them in the moment, I say something, I say a statement, I make but it's gone. It's gone instantly. When you ask me about it 2 days later, I'm like, it probably doesn't even matter now. It's probably not relevant. Let's see what's going on right now. So really, when it comes to awakening, it's much more fruitful to really start letting go of the need to map your experience. Yeah. So I want to say that first. Second thing I want to say, though, is I can give some answers to this, and that's okay. This person may have already gone through awakening. I don't know. But one answer I will give you is that the first shift tends to have rather spacious qualities, for sure. That's one of the things that's very common. I would say it's always there. However, even the word spacious, some people may not use that word, right? People use very different words to describe their first shift. Some people call it I am sense. They wake up to the I am sense. Not everybody does. Some people realize there's no separate self. That's the way they would describe it. So for me, it was, all of those would have made sense if you said them to me, but I would have said for sure, this is descriptionless. This is descriptionless. Reality is descriptionless. It's, you could say I, you, no one, everyone, here, there, awake, asleep, I am, no self. Like all of that to me, it would be were clearly concepts. That's what I woke up to. I woke up to seeing the conceptual frameworks are just thoughts. And with that, there was a big release. It was a kind of energetic release, which I can't put words to because it's a very, very felt experience. And it's also not just an experience. It's when the mind turning thoughts and concepts into experiences ceases. May not cease permanently at this stage, but it will cease. And then you see, oh, this is primary to experience. It's primary to someone experiencing something. So it has this vastness to it, this fluidity. So I can give words like fluidity, vastness, a release, a relief, peace, naturalness, spaciousness. All of that is true. And mechanistically, which I'm always interested in mechanism of this, it is actually true that consciousness itself is tremendously expansive. I would even call it oceanic. Yeah. It's expansive kind of suggests there's something getting bigger or something like that. This is oceanic. It's vast beyond vast. Yeah. And that's that first shift. And it often is very much that way, sensed and felt as this vastness, spaciousness, oceanic nature of being, of knowingness without an object of knowing and so forth. So all of that is pretty accurate. But the next part of the question says, is that the case for everyone? So again, people may use different words, but to some degree, yeah, that's kind of how this goes. But then they asked, does it last or is it only in the moment of awakening? And I would say almost by definition, it does last some time. If you get a very brief glimpse of something like that, that's usually not awakening. It's kind of like a pre-taste. And that can happen in a lot of ways. It can happen with psychedelics. It can happen when it happened to me a couple of weeks after I learned to meditate. I had this big opening, but it just closed right back down. There was no actual alteration in the experience of identity or taking of who I was as the separate thought-based person that was defined by my past and by thoughts and memories and stuff. That didn't go away. It didn't change. So yeah, if it lasts very momentarily or even a few hours or sometimes a day or maybe even 2 days, often that's a pre-taste and often it closes completely back down, which can feel really horrible because it's like, oh, I had it and I lost it. Like I found the Garden of Eden and I was kicked out. So just so you know, it's usually not an instantaneous but then gone thing. It tends to, the effect of it tends to stick around for a while. There's what I describe as a honeymoon period often, and it varies a lot. Some people would describe their honeymoon period as like a few days or a couple weeks or something. Some people would describe it as months and even a year or more I've seen. So it's a gray area. The honeymoon doesn't mean you feel 100% blissed out all the time with no reactivity and no concerns or worries and no trigger and no contraction. That's not usually the case, but the dramatic contrast between before and after makes it feel like it's quite open, quite expansive, quite oceanic and free for quite some time. So that's usually how it goes. Again, everybody's different. This isn't your map. This is just what I see when I kind of summate a bunch of experiences or interactions with people who've gone through this. And yeah, so that's kind of the crux of the question. But I also want to say I really like that the Adyashanti describes as an up and out, which is really you have to open yourself to the infinite dimension of yourself before you can go beyond yourself. And the down and in part, I really like. I won't try to give you the map in the way Adyashanti does necessarily because I don't want to talk for him, but I can say what it means to me and how it seems to relate to what I see having gone through this, seeing all other people going through it all the time. The down and in is really shadow work. It's so critical to do the shadow work in a very Jungian way. Like, Transformation is in the shadow. You got to go there. You got to go where you don't want to go. You got to feel what you don't want to feel. And there are a million ways to do it. I have a giant playlist. Maybe my biggest playlist is that one. And incorporating more and more of this into my retreats, into things. But yeah, the down and in is like critical. And another way you could say it is that's the integration of the absolute realization, the realization of the absolute, which we could say is like a very deep first awakening. You might say that's a pretty thorough realization of the absolute nature of reality. But integrating that back into the conventional, yeah, and not sort of holding on to that too long. It's very appealing when you've suffered so much and felt contracted your whole life to feel not contracted, expansive, and so forth. But we can also reify that mentally without realizing it. So the down and in will come online for you. You'll be called there. You will be called down and in. It just happens. And I wouldn't even say, in my experience, it's like a stage as much as they become parallel pathways. I recommend people continuing insight work after awakening, and I highly, highly recommend and urge people to do shadow work. So they kind of start going hand in hand, the up and out and down and in, until they're not two. Up and out and down and in aren't two. With clear non-dual realization, it's pretty obvious. And that means not just the absolute nature, that means the relative nature. If you have hidden trauma, repressed parts of yourself, repressed emotions, they are coming full on into consciousness, and you can't stop them. You can't, once you break that seventh fetter, there's no getting it back. So that's why you might as well work on it as soon as it comes, that shadow material. So you will go down and in, and you will be up and out, and you will see where those interpenetrate, and you'll see where there is no in or out. You'll see where there is no entry or exit point, like Zen, right? You'll see where there's also just the conventional, and it's perfectly fine, and there's no need to negate it. You don't have to walk around telling people you're no one. It's not like that. Conventional self is not a problem. It's an illusion, but it's not a problem. And the paradox is you can inhabit that illusion so fully and so humanly only really when you've died. So, yeah, love Adyashanti. Oh, by the way, I think this weekend is his last live get-together or something like that. So that's really cool. Yeah, I hope a lot of people watching this will go to that. Well, this actually video is going to come out later, so it'll be after that. So it'll be last weekend, but I hope people have gone to that. And I'm sure it's going to be a good one. So much love to you all. We'll talk soon.